you're winning. Welcome to another exciting episode of Epic Understanding. I am your host, Coach Love, and I am delighted to bring to you Morris Brown. He is the author of Hanging with the Girls. Look at this book cover. It is fabulous in itself, and it gives us a little bit of a insight of the kind of journey that we will take when we read this book. I mean, Morris is just the ultimate girl dad. I can't wait for you to meet him, but he's much more. We'll find that out as well. Hello, Morris. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Erica. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Now, I'm just going to pop this art up here for you to look at a little bit with me. What a fabulous book cover. Tell us a little bit about this, Morris.
Well, I did some research before I got started with the book, and I went to Barnes and Noble and I looked at all the tons and tons of beautiful books. And I said, wow, how am I going to stand out from all these great books? So I did research and I looked and read and opened and looked at more. And I saw that a lot of books had simple text on the front, and typically in advertising, they say that you have to catch them quick,
Mm-hmm.
from the onset, like when you're doing magazine advertising. So I said, how can I catch the audience quickly? So I said, let me put, an amazing title. And actually, I looked at, how the pros do it. I looked at all the animation cartoons like Toy Story and all the other ones that are done by Lucas Studios, and looked at some of their text and how they did things, and just did a lot of research on color palette, color spectrum, and different hues of colors to use. And I did research on what are the best colors to use. So I did really some thought process into this. And I like sunsets. I go to the beach all the time and check out the sunset after work. So I want the sunset to be there. And it also ties into the story because the kids and I would typically stay out all day playing until the sun sets. So
Well,
it's kind of like
I must
a,
say, it is
yeah,
really very appealing, extremely
yeah.
appealing.
Now, the important thing about the cover is that there's people on the cover. I don't know if I'm going to cut back to it for a second, but
Right.
you see there's people on, and then you got me. I'm blocking one of the little kids there.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, but each one of those people, the guy with the tennis racket, the kid in the black shirt, the Indian on the horse, the Native American on the horse, the little duck, and the little boy on the side, they are all vital parts of some of the stories. The book is 22 chapters long, and it's over 100 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I had to stop writing because I didn't want to keep going on for. I got like 15 more chapters I could have written, but I just maybe I'll do that for part two. But these people on the front are a vital part of some of the chapters, and this is not your typical kids book. It's about 90% autobiographical things that actually happened to me and my kids, and about 10% fiction I threw in for fun. But very interesting stories on the front cover of some of these people that are here.
Now, you have a homeless person with a tennis racket on the cover of this book. Tell us about that.
Well, that's one of the sadder parts. I want to say sadder parts, but just
Oh.
crazy parts. Crazy, one of the crazy chapters in the book, and there's a lot of fun stuff in there too. But that guy with the tennis racket, and you see his, I put 40 no love on his
Hmm.
shirt, and that's when my daughter and I, my younger daughter and I, got attacked
Okay.
by a homeless person.
Hmm.
We were, I take my kids out to play tennis all the time when they were young. We still go play tennis. They're bigger now. But basically, we were going to the beach here in Santa Monica, California. I had just got a new car. I was really excited and happy. And we had parked in the parking lot at the beach. So I would get out to shine my car before we go play tennis. So my younger daughter's in the front seat, passenger side. I'm shining my car, all happy that I got this car. And across the parking lot, I see a guy. He looks homeless, and he has a tennis racket. So I'm like, well, I guess homeless people need to get a workout too. I didn't know what to think. He's going to play tennis, I suppose. I don't know. So I'm continuing to shine my car, and he gets closer and closer to my car. And I thought he's going to walk past. As soon as he gets to the back of my car, he goes wham, wham, breaks out the back light of my car. So I'm starting to like, what the blank, what the heck is going on here? My daughter's starting to get a little startled. She's in the front seat. She doesn't know what's going on. So I go back there. He starts, and I'm like, what in the blankety blank? What did you do to my car? He starts walking toward my daughter on on her side of the car. I start hauling after this guy, chasing this guy, and he was pretty fast for a homeless guy. I don't know, this guy ran track or what, but this guy was pretty fast. But I played football in college, and I chased many a quarterback. So he was quarterback meat to me. So I finally got this guy, grabbed him, picked him up in the air, slammed this guy down, and commenced to start to just beating this guy like no tomorrow. I took his tennis racket, beat him over the head, broke his tennis racket on his head, and I just was pounding this guy. So after I finished, and then people in the parking lot are starting to yell at me, saying, "Oh, leave this poor man alone. This poor man." I'm like, "Did you see what he did to my car?" So they missed that part. But anyway, so I go back to my car. My daughter's crying, "Oh, daddy, daddy, daddy." She's crying tears. I'm all freaked out. So we get in the car. I thought I was going to wait for the police, but we just drove off, went home. So a week later, we come back to the same tennis courts, going to play tennis. And we're down in the tennis courts. And then my daughter says, "Daddy, I think I see the guy that hit your car." And I turn around. It's the same guy from last week that I pounded. So I go out there to this guy again, giving him a mouthful of my displeasure. And I say, "Man, you better get in here and apologize to my daughter right now, because you scared the heck out of my daughter. You destroyed my backlight of my car. Get in here." So I brought him into the tennis court where my daughter was. And I said, "Hey, apologize to my daughter." So he apologized to my daughter. And then I said, "Okay," I felt a little bit better. And I said, "Man, why did you attack? Why did you hit my car?" And he says, "Well, the devil told me to do it, or somebody in my head told me to do it." I'm like, "Oh boy, this guy, he's a crazy guy, he's homeless." I started feeling bad for the guy. I just thought he was out of his head or whatever. So I'm praying like, "Oh God, what should I do?" So he has his tennis racket. So I say, "Hey, you want to play tennis?" And we played tennis for half an hour, like two regular guys playing tennis. And he was pretty good. And over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks or so, I would see this guy on and off, and we played tennis. And after that, I never saw the guy ever again. So that's one of the stories in the book.
So, what made it so important to include that story in your book?
Because I think it told a story of, and I point this out in the book in that chapter, that the moral to the story, or the two things that are important takeaways from that particular chapter, are: one, protect your kids at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
Two, give people the benefit of the doubt, even when they may not deserve it. Because he didn't deserve it. I mean, he scared the heck out of my kid. He destroyed my property, my car. And, so he didn't have anything positive on his side from anybody's perspective. But something within the core of me said, I don't know what this guy's life has been like. He did do some serious stuff, but let me. He got his tennis racket. Let me play a little tennis with this guy, and we got to be some kind of strange friends over the course of those 2 weeks that we played tennis together. I'd see him and we'd play, and it was kind of weird, but we played tennis.
So that's powerful. So I'm going to sum that up to say, protect your kids at all costs, but lead with compassion.
Yeah, I mean, homeless people, and there's lots of homeless people in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
I've helped many a homeless person during COVID. I was buying this guy tons of clothes during COVID because I just felt sorry for the poor guy, and I even took him out to the beach, and we had a gorgeous time out there. So I have more than some people, not everybody. Some people have more than me, but if I have something to give, I have that kind of compassionate heart where I just want to help people, And the thing I did with him, the guy who attacked us, is something in my mind just said, hey, this guy's had a rough life. This guy is something's happened with him. Let's see if I can turn the tables and turn a negative into a positive. And he turned out to be a nice guy. After I started playing tennis with him, I just saw that he was a nice guy who maybe had been through a lot in his life. And I'm not sure if drugs were involved at all for him to say that somebody in his head, he's hallucinating, saying somebody in his head told him or the devil told him to do this or whatever. But, sometimes you need to have compassion where there is no compassion. So.
Well, it definitely sounds like he might have been hallucinating. I wonder what your girls would have to say about that story now.
My only one that was there that day was my younger daughter, and she remembers it to this very day. I mean, I told her because they know I'm working on the book, and I said, "You remember that story about the guy who attacked us?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, so she remembers clearly, and she was freaked out at the time, but I'm sure that over time she said my daddy was there to protect me.
That's good. That's
My
good.
dad. Yeah,
So that's a wonderful tip. That is a wonderful tip.
yeah.
Um, what's another really good tip that you'd like to leave dads?
Well, that's because I recall seeing the advertising for this, the 5 tips, for dad for girl dads,
Mm-hmm.
and the tip that I can really give, because I think back to when I was a kid and what did I get from my parents? What did I get from my dad? What did I
Mm-hmm.
get from my mom? And the thing I got from my dad was named Morris as well.
I see.
So I'm Morris Jr., he was Morris Sr.
Uh-huh.
So I was like his little gem in his eyes. He was like, this is Morris Jr. Wow. And he would show me off to his friends and everything. So I felt special because he made me feel special. And my dad went through a lot, with racism during the time that I was growing up, and, the things he went through on the job and all the horrible things that happened. And he'd come home and he'd come home frustrated, but he still found time to love me and to tell me how much he loved me, even through his stress of the racism that was happening at that time when I was coming up. And he did eventually become an alcoholic, and later on, died years later of a heart attack. But when he was there for me, and he'd come home and from work after he worked 20 years in the steel mill, U.S. Steel back in Chicago, and it never would promote him. They'd have guys coming out who had far less experience, and they'd pass over him and give other people promotions and give him promotion. And he'd come home frustrated, but he'd still come home and give me hugs and kisses and take us out to the beach and, just some fun times. So I remember fun times with my dad. I mean, the only thing that wasn't a fun time was when you're getting the spanking. But when you're doing stuff you're not supposed to do, you got to get a spanking. So I got a few of those, and so that wasn't fun. But he was just a loving dad overall, and my mom was the same way. My mom was a disciplinarian, though.
Oh, I see.
My mom didn't take any mess. She was
So
I
as a
mean,
girl dad, did you spank your girls?
coming up, I just gave them that look. I mean, they got a couple of, taps on the butt and little spankings here and there, but nothing like I got. I mean, my dad would get the belt out. He'd say, okay, here we go. So I got the heavy duty stuff. My kids got nothing anywhere near what I got. So I
Mm,
think they were, they definitely, I still got the point across through talking. And I mean, they got spankings, but it was nothing like the beatings that I got. But, you just try to
mm,
be the best dad you can be and try to take violence out of the equation. And because I don't think you need violence to discipline a kid, but the Bible does say, don't spare the rod. So you have to
yeah.
discipline your kids. The
Yeah,
question is, to what degree do you discipline? When does it become, abuse and not just spanking? So I
I
made
see.
sure that my kids didn't go through what I went through as a kid, as far as that's concerned.
Well, fair enough, and I'm glad that they didn't. Um, there is a little boy here, and his shirt says "push." What's that
Yeah.
about? What's that story about?
Okay, I can tell you about that one. Um, his name is Isaiah,
Hmm.
and I had to rewrite the story in the book for him
Okay.
because the story is different than the one in the book. In the book, I have my little girls are playing with him and doing some things and this and that. But the story was more sad in real life.
Oh,
In the book, I just have that, nobody was pushing him.
okay.
So he said, "Hey, can I have a push too?" And then I pushed him in the swing so he could have a push too.
And
And then
that's
my
in the book.
and then my girls were there and they were playing with him. But the story is a little different than that. So I'll tell you the real story, and your audience is getting inside scoop here. I was driving down the street because I told you my daughters and I play tennis. So I was driving down the street and I saw this tennis courts off to the side. Is
Uh-huh.
street called La Brea, and as you come down the hill, there's like these tennis courts over there. And I had played on those tennis courts before. So I was like, wow, let me go check that out. So I drove around the block to get to those tennis courts because you got to go around. And I went over there. I said, okay, I have to bring the kids over here and we'll have to, try these tennis courts out. And then as I'm driving away, I see that there's a park over there too where the kids can play. So I
Okay.
was like, wow, maybe I can take the kids over here to go play. Let me go check out this park. So I park my car. I go over there and okay, this park looks pretty good. It's not riffraff. It's clean, And it was like a hot day as I recall. So I sat down for a minute at one of the benches, like where you have a picnic or whatever. And I see families out there and different kids and their parents and so forth. And this little boy comes and walks up to me at the table and he says, "Hi, how you doing?" He like to start
Okay.
talking. And I'm like, "Hey, how you doing there? What's going on?" I'm like, I think I don't know if it was a school day or not. I can't remember, but I think I asked him, what are you doing here? That's your mom over? Because his mom was like right over there. He says, "Is that your mom?" I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, what are you guys doing today? And then he started saying some stuff that blew my mind. He started spewing off. He's like, "Well, we're here because we have to wait till we have to go to the probation officer in court, and we have to see about Section Code 229 for my mom to see if she's going to go back in jail or not, and she's going to have to see if she's off probation this week, and we're going to have to see if it's Section Code 224." This kid was like 7 and 8 years old, and he's reciting courtroom jargon of city civil codes, and he knows the codes, and it just my heart just sunk because here's a kid who's I don't know what happened with his mom where she's on probation, but she was from what he was telling me, and that they had to go to court and see if she was going to be in jail or the judge was going to deal with whatever civil code that he was spewing to me. And I was just amazed at this kid, and it hurt my heart. Why does a kid have to know court vernacular to know this stuff so well that he can recite it back at 7 years old? So it really kind of broke my heart. and there was a lot of kids playing in the park at the time. So as he was saying this, he kind of paused and he looked a little sad. And I said, "Hey, do you want me to push you in the swing?" And I saw his mom over there. And he said, "Yeah, okay." So I went over there to the swings and pushed him in the swing. And he's just happy camper. I'm not sure where his dad is or what that part of his life is about with his mother or whatever. But when I was pushing him in the swing, he was the happiest kid in the park that day, it seemed, because nobody was pushing him. He was there, waiting for his mom to go to court. So, it was nice to brighten up his day for that 5 or 10 minutes that I pushed him in the swing, and then I had to go. So I said, "Well, Isaiah, it's a pleasure meeting you, man," and waved to his mom over there, and then I left. And that's the story of pushing Isaiah. Are you there? You must be on mute because I can't hear you or see you, Erica. So I'm not sure what happened. So I will just wait here patiently. I'm not sure if the audience can still see me. I'm not sure what happened to Erica. I can't hear her and I can't see her. So let me dig into my bags of jokes. Well, I don't have any jokes to tell. I can say hi to all my friends and family. If you guys can hear me until Erica comes back, I guess I can say hello to everybody. There's people in Chicago checking me out, some buddies of mine, friends back there. There's some friends of mine up in the Bay Area checking me out. Some friends in Fresno, California, checking me out. There's some here in Los Angeles. There's some overseas. So a little bit of everybody. And I just want to thank everybody from LinkedIn, because there's a lot of people on LinkedIn who saw my commercial that I did, a little commercial about the book that I have coming. And I also did a little blurb about, the book itself and a little bit about my background. So I just want to thank everybody on LinkedIn who supported me, is continuing to support my effort. And I just want to thank you guys so much. The book is wrapping up, where I'm going to be, getting it off the final edit and approval. And then I'll have it up on Amazon for you pretty soon. So that is a big thank you to my LinkedIn following, and just everybody else who's watching. I got some friends in, I think, Canada that may be watching as well. And a lot of folks on who I've sent this message out to today to check this out. So just want to thank everybody for being here. And I think I may have to give Erica a phone call, because I'm not sure what happened to her. And I'm trying to amuse you and do a little tap dancing as best I can until I figure out what's going on with Erica. So let me call her and find out what's going on. So I'm going to grab my cell phone here. So this is like live, unscripted. I'm going to call Erica and find out what happened and then we can continue on with our show. So you guys are going to hear this live as I call her to find out what happened. So let's call her together.
Oh, hold on one second. I'm having a little bit of an issue here.
Okay. I'll just stand by then.
Stand by, please.
All right. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was a little bit difficult there on my end for a moment there. So, in this journey of writing this book,
Yes.
what did you really want people to get out of it?
Well, let me give you a little backstory, and then I'll get to that question. Some in my eye here. But basically, the reason I wrote this book was because of COVID, really, and I'll tell you why. I had the idea to start writing this book about 15 years ago. I had
Oh,
all the
wow.
I had the framework. I had some preliminary stuff written out and just kind of a basic idea of how I want. I haven't had the title, hanging with the girls, but you know, life, you get busy and this and that. So I got busy, and I put it on the shelf for 15 years.
Oh, my.
And then you got something on your nose here. I think
I
it's
see there.
Yeah.
It's my lipstick.
Yeah, you kissing yourself.
I
There you go. You got some here too on your chin.
see.
Yeah. But anyway, so 15 years into this, then COVID hits. And as you remember, in the early part of COVID, you could hardly leave your house or, you know, drive to the grocery store and back. They didn't even want you outside.
Correct.
So we were really stuck in the house. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, and I'm a technical trainer, and I had just finished a project. So I hadn't gone to my next project yet. So I'm like, wow, I cannot. And I was like really getting stir crazy because I'm an athlete, and I still go work out, still ride my bike, still go to the gym, do all the stuff, play tennis. And I was like, I couldn't do any of that stuff. So like,
Mhm.
I'm going stir crazy. So I thank God I had my piano here so I could play a little music, and so I got more into my songwriting stuff. But then I said, what else can I do? And I said, this idea for hanging with the girls that I had 15 years ago, why don't I pull that out of the closet and get this thing going? And that was the catalyst to pull it out of the closet, dust it off, start the typing. And now it took me like only a month or two to write the book.
Wow.
The thing that's taken so long is the graphic design, because the graphic design, you
No,
got to
who
have
did that
pictures.
for you?
I got like at least 8 people. I got 3 or 4 graphic designers. I got a motion graphic designer. I got a
A
person.
motion graphic designer?
You saw the commercial, right?
Okay, I got it. Okay, that's
Yeah.
okay.
So there's different components of, you know, advertising and in the book itself. But so I had this incredible illustrator from Vietnam, and this guy is. I mean, the characters you see on the front of the book are his work, and he did an incredible job. This my lead illustrator from Vietnam, and then I had people from all over the world. I had people from America, Bangladesh, um, India. Um, it was a Ukraine. I think Ukraine is one, and I got yeah. I got to check the actual location, but those are some of them, and a lot of, you know, great artists involved to make this project, my vision, happen, because this is different than a typical kids book. Typical kids book that I've saw in the bookstore, you open it up and there are some cartoon characters. You know, you see, you kind of go through it and you got the little cartoon background and so forth. The different thing about this book, and my publisher, who's in New Orleans,
Mhm.
she has written over 200 books.
Oh, wow.
She is amazing. And she saw my book, and she's very hard on authors. If she doesn't like it, she'll tell them it's not, you know, whatever. It's not the thing. But she saw my book cover And she said, this is going to be something. This is, and I explained how I'm doing it. And the way I'm doing it is this way. Every park, because this book is about, going to the park. Every park that my kids and I went to, which was over 30 parks, I went out myself and shot pictures of every single park. Brought that all back and said, my kids are big now. How am I going to do this book? My kids are not kids anymore. They're big. So I said, I'll use real pictures of the actual parks that we went to, but I'll use cartoon characters to play the role of my kids at a different age in the parks. So in the book, you're seeing the actual parks that they played in, but they're cartoon characters. And I have real pictures of when they were kids where I took pictures of them at the park that are at the same park. So that's how I approached it. And the really funny part about this is that, and at the end of the book, I talk about this, the homeless, like people you see on the front, the homeless guy, the pushing Isaiah, there's another kid off to the side. That's a whole another funny part of the whole story. And the story about that is that I went to the beach. Yeah, see the guy there? The bracket, and then the kid in the black shirt, and then the little guy by my legs in the blue shirt. You can't really see him.
Let me see if I can add an unedited version up here for us to look at. If you give me a minute here, because I had to get this together for the actual show today, and so it has some edits on it. I'm going to see if I can't upload your copy without the edits.
Sure.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So you see the kid in the light blue shirt? It says, "Be my friend." That's another story. And guess what? Those two kids are brothers.
Oh, wow.
And because when I was writing this book, I said, do I want to have the people in the book also be cartoon characters? Or do I want them to be real? So it'll be like a different type of kids book. It's not your typical kids book because I got real actors. So I went to the beach, the same beach where this guy attacked me and my daughter, and there's a basketball court right next to the tennis courts where my kids and I play. So I'm like, looking all over the beach, like, how am I going to find somebody to? Because I think I want to find the kids to play the part of these kids that I saw in the park. So I saw a dad at a basketball court next to these tennis courts where my daughter and I were, and he was playing basketball with his kids.
Okay.
I was like, and they're like the right age. I'm like, man, this guy his dad would be perfect for the book. And I said, how am I going to do this? I just be a crazy person. Hey, you want to be in my book? Gonna write in the book, But that's exactly what I did. I walked up to this guy out of the clear blue sky, and I said, "Hey, man, excuse me, man. I'm writing this book, and I think your kids would be perfect for this book. And this guy attacked me here at the parking lot. And I'm doing this thing, and I'm trying to get a homeless person, and your kids would be good for the other part." And he looks at me like, "What is this guy talking about?" But then he finally says, "Okay, yeah." And I say, "Man, that's wonderful." And I paid him, actually. I paid him as like an actor's fee for both the kids to act in the book.
Oh, wow.
This guy was incredible. I had to go, the first part, the kid in the blue shirt that says, "Be my friend," that was in one park in Santa Monica.
Okay.
The other park, where the kid with the black t-shirt, that was like 10 miles away at a whole nother park in Los Angeles. So we had to drive all across town to shoot the other shot of the other kid at the park. So I am like, all the shots are framed in my head. I'm also a director. I have my own production company. I shot music videos. My background is in television. So I worked at all the networks, Fox and CNN and NBC, and then I had my own production company. We shot music videos. So I knew all about production and shooting and framing and camera framing and camera setup and all that stuff. So I had in my head the shots that I wanted right there ready to go in my mind. So as soon as I got to the park, I'm like, okay, do this, put your arm up. Okay, do that. Okay, do this. And we did all this stuff. And these kids were like professionals.
Hey.
These kids were like, it was amazing the level of, I mean, once you see the book, you'll see that it was just incredible the amount of skill that these non-actors had. And the little guy in the blue shirt, I mean, his dad and his brothers were there. He was just did an incredible job. So I was just really so happy to see the end result. I think the audience, when you guys see this book and you see the storyline of the dialogue and the pictures and how they mesh with the characters, they work out perfectly. So I'm just as excited as the audience that's waiting to read it, because it's like a piece of puzzle. You know, you hope it comes together, and then you make it come together. So I'd say a big aspect of this was knowing my shots before I went moving forward, and then the second part was my illustrator.
So you had the photography that you did, and then you had your illustrator. So this is quite the complex project.
It's not for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of thought and understanding shot composition, understanding framing, understanding, because you really got to frame the stuff the exact way or it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go back to the park and shoot some reshoots because even I was off a little bit on some of the shots. So
Okay.
I went back to like three or four of the parks and did a whole another reshoot because I was off a little bit. So it took some thinking, structuring your shot composition, and then having your illustrator lay it out in such a way that it just works out as far as their movements, where they're looking left, right. Even the sun played a role. Where's the sun in the sky? You know, trying to match shadows and so forth. Everything's not perfect, but it definitely came out great. So I'm just about wrapped up with it. It's a cute little
I mean,
yeah.
it's quite brilliant. It's quite brilliant. So, if you wouldn't mind, give us a couple of lessons. What are the tips we want to um, know
Sure.
regarding these two fellas? Be my friend and push.
Okay, Push. As I mentioned, what a sad story. You know, what a sad story. That poor guy with his mom on probation, and you know, going to court and knowing the court vernacular is just like, this kid doesn't need to know what kind of life did he have.
Mm-hmm.
He going to court that much where he can recite, you know, court jargon or whatever.
Right.
But the other kid, that's another story that's sad.
Mm-hmm. Oh
And
wow.
I'll tell you that story. Now you see his shirt says, "Be my friend." And you
Mm-hmm.
see a little kid there in the corner there.
But
And
before we get off into the story, I'm looking for particularly the girl dad tips.
all right, okay. Here's my first tip, just for parents in general. I think the problem with the world is what I'm about to say. It could help the world because if you look at what's happened in the world in the last 10, 15, 20 years, the shooting in Texas, all those poor kids,
Mm-hmm.
and there's been numerous other school shootings.
Mm-hmm.
When I would go pick up my kids at school, all of my kids' friends would come running toward me, and I got like 10 kids grabbing all over me. Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Brown, Mr. Brown. And I'm like, why are these kids running toward me? And then as they released and their parents were coming, I saw why they were running toward me.
And so why was that?
Some of those parents looked mean, not friendly. Some of them were yelling at their kids. Some were like, just the kids looked unhappy as soon as their parents got there.
Okay.
So my thing is, if you're going to have kids, try your best to love them as best you can. I know life is stressful. People got a lot on their minds as far as work or relationships with their spouse or finances or health or whatever. I had all that too,
Okay.
but I still made a point to give my kids quality time. That would be my tip. No matter what life is, no matter what brick life is throwing at you, and life will throw a lot of bricks at you. Whatever bricks are being thrown at you, put on your football helmet, put on your shoulder pads, and take it like a man, and go give your kids some quality time anyway. And that's exactly what I did. I had life throwing tons of bricks at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, my kids are here. My dad came home from a racist, horrible situation at his job, and he still found time to show me some love. I want to pass that tradition on to my kids and show them exact same kind of love or more, so that my kids can never say, my dad was too busy. My dad didn't have a chance to listen to me. I did everything and then some, to the point where my kids are saying, okay, Dad, that's enough. I kind of got to the overboard area where
You're
I was
pretty,
like,
I would have to say you're a pretty energetic guy. You play piano, you have, you know, your art that you actually do. Now, this is the second book that you've written. You
yeah.
are into television and you almost went to play pro sports. I mean, you are kind of an exceptional guy.
Yeah, I've always been this kind of an oddball, I don't want to say oddball black guy, but I have, in the sense that, you know, I worked in corporate America for a lot of years, and people see me and hear about my background and hear me talk, and I don't fit their preconceived notion of what they think I should be,
Hmm.
because I'm 6'3", 280 pounds, former athlete, and now have been a university instructor. I've had a pretty successful career, and so I don't think I fit a lot of the norm that people want to put on somebody of my stature and size or whatever in my background. But my mom was like I said, she led the house with an iron fist, and it was
Mm.
yes mom, no mom, and dad was the same way. So the discipline was there. And then when I got into sports at a very early age, the discipline in sports was there. And then my dad is a veteran, so he had the military background that he brought to the household, but he
Hmm.
was still loving about it. He wasn't like a militarized household.
Okay.
He ran his house well, but he still had the love component. And that's what I wanted to have as well, is just to have that quality time with my kids. Because when I saw those kids in my kids' grammar school
Hmm.
running toward me and seeing the love that maybe they were not getting, I was like,
Hmm.
oh my God, I gotta just love my kids. That's the problem with this world. All those kids who did those school shootings,
Hmm.
you could go back to their mom and dad. I bet you'd find the source of why those kids came out the way they did and did what they did, because of lack of love or attention or something in the house. The main problem with the world is the house, the family, and the breakdown of family because of number of factors.
So, tip number one was make sure your children feel protected.
And quality time,
Yeah. Tip number two is quality time.
for
Tip
sure.
number three is make sure they feel love.
Exactly. If,
Mhm.
if if your kids, and like I always gave, because the slightest thing you can do, and you don't know how impact it would have on a kid. I've heard nicknames for kids that parents call their kids. I've heard of parents call their kid Fatso.
Hmm.
I've heard a parent call their kid Bozo,
Mhm.
and these are all like supposedly cute little names.
Mhm.
And when a kid grows up and realizes what bozo and fatso really means,
Mm-hmm.
how have you affected their brain all through these, years of coming up at their younger years? So I would give my kids nickname like Princess, Sweetie Pie, Baby, you know, little cute baby, how these cute nicknames. So when they grow up, they go, oh, I was called cute things as a kid. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't called fatso or bozo or whatever. And so it's amazing the impact you can have at a very early age.
So is that the fourth tip, to make sure that you use words that make them feel valued and appreciated?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, the kids at the schools that they go to are not raising the kids maybe like you're raising your kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you may go to the principal's office because of what some other kid did. And that was always the case in my kids. I never had to go to school because my kid hit some other kid or my kid was causing some trouble. That never happened. I only have to go to school because some other kid was picking on my kid or wanted to start fighting my kid because their kids weren't raised as well as I raised mine.
So what kind of things that you say to your girls when an incident like that happened? What was the conversation like?
Well, you know, I would always go to the nonviolent route. I would never say, hit this kid in the nose if he hits you again. But I did say you have to stand up for yourself as well. You're not just going to be a little wuss and not do anything. So I
So,
said, the first thing you do is let the teacher know what's going on.
mm-hmm.
This kid, don't let somebody just walk up to you. You see they're about to punch you. Don't just let them punch you. You defend yourself in whatever way you can. But typically, I would have to have them point out to the teacher, whoever was there, what's going on. And that's what my kids did a lot of the time, was point it out. And then I'd be up to the school and this other kid, and I'd see their parent, and I could see what the problem was. Once again,
Right.
back to my initial point, parents and their relationship, what happened to that parent? And then you get into this cycle of kids who weren't taken care of well, and that parent and that parent and that parent, all the way back, and you have generations of this
Mhm.
dysfunctionality.
Yeah,
So
just on the previous live that we did, the show that was right before yours, we talked about the idea of taking responsibility for your own healing. As adults, that's something that we have to do. So it may be true that things happen to us as a child, and I'm very in tune to the idea of adverse childhood experiences because I work with ACEs Matter. That's very important. So we can acknowledge that certain things happen to us as a child, but at the same time, we have to take ownership of our healing, and that's a big part of adulting. I said that to say this, um, when we don't take ownership of our healing, it is so easy to create those issues in our children unnecessarily.
yeah, I mean, I was very in tune with what you just said. And what brought it to life was that I saw this in other kids. I could see the anguish in their eyes and in their face, knowing that something was happening not right at their house. Because
Mm-hmm.
they're looking sad, dejected. And I told myself, and a little back history on my younger daughter, when I met my kid's mom,
Mm-hmm.
she already had a 1 year old,
I
which I,
see.
which I fell in love with. And then we had my younger daughter came after her. And I basically said, wow. And my second daughter, she wasn't planned.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people, you know, who make babies in their younger years. If you're going to make the baby, you have to take care of the baby some way, shape, or form. I mean, I know there's adoption, and if somebody's really young, they give it up for adoption or whatever the case may be. But if you're of age and you can take care of that child, give that child your all, give it your best ability. My child was unplanned. We didn't plan on getting pregnant. It just happened. And I said, okay, I'm going to have the smartest baby that I can have, and I'm going to be the greatest dad that I can be, which was the push to write my first book, which was on fetal stimulation and behavioral genetics. And that book was based on my daughter, on how to make a more intelligent baby. So I was already motivated to be a good dad even before that my first kid was born.
I think that is very impressive. I don't want to give too much away about your previous book, but you took a scientific approach to making your daughter smarter.
That is true. That is true. Once I made the commitment that we're going to have this baby, and we both had a joint meeting, said we're both going to have this baby.
Hmm.
We said, okay, what can I do before the baby is born? I started getting excited now. I'm going to be a daddy. Even though she had the 1-year-old, which I was already a father to, but we're going to have like a biological child that's a part of me. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is, what am I going to do here? So I said, okay. And then I was trying to, everybody talks about side hustle today. Everybody's got a side
Right.
hustle to that. Back then, side hustles weren't that big, but I was still trying to find a side hustle way back then. And then I saw this ad about, having a product and you sell it in a newspaper or do something.
Hmm.
I said, but you got to have a product. You got to have some shoes or some purses or something, or you got a book. And I said, a book? I said, I can write a book, and then that can be my product. He said, there we go. So I don't have any experience in the medical field except for I'm a technical trainer, and I've worked at some of, Kaiser Permanente and Cedars-Sinai and other places as a technical trainer, but I'm not a medical person by trade. And I just came across this idea of saying, okay, since I'm having a kid, how can I help my unborn kid? And I said, okay, I can make her smarter. I can make her the smartest kid in the world. So I said, okay, what am I going to do? So I researched for months and months and months all these things about, the fetus and, in utero, research that had been done on first, second, and third trimester
Uh-huh.
on fetus and what you can do. And I came up with this interesting hypothesis of training the sperm and training the eggs before you have intercourse and before anything gets to the fallopian tubes. You train the sperm and you train the eggs sonically through sonic stimulation.
Okay.
So that once this stimulation protocol is applied to the sperm and to the eggs, once they do meet up in the fallopian tubes, now you still have this residual resonance there in the sperm and in the eggs. So my hypothesis is that if you go through this protocol of applying this process, when they finally meet up, they recognize this sonic signature. It's almost like the software 𝐓𝐢𝐲𝐬. When you put your phone up to a speaker to hear a song, and then the software tells you what song that is. The way it can tell you that is because the waveform that song is emitting gives you an algorithm that is specific to that song. So when I brought the sperm and the egg together and we played the same song for the sperm and the egg, when you bring them together, this is a learned experience on both sides. So when you bring them together, they say, hey, I recognize this sonic signature. I recognize it too. So this is a learned experience that then is transferred into the genetics, because typically when a baby is born, when we're all born, you're born with a certain amount of synaptic connections in the brain.
Okay.
My hypothesis is that if you do this training beforehand, and then this meeting up and joining before the actual creation of the fetus itself, you're actually possibly increasing the synaptic growth in the brain, which equates to a smarter baby. I'm not a doctor, but somehow I thought about that.
Well, I think you have your yourself quite the hypothesis there. I think it's certainly worth trying out. I believe you had a friend who, tried that.
Yeah,
And
what happened was my kid came out and she was sharp as a tack. I mean, she was doing stuff like speaking early, fixing things. My razor was broken, 4 different pieces. She's like 3 years old. There it is, and she puts it back together. And she's speaking 100 miles an hour. She's like, 2, 3, 4 years old. Speaking so fast. I'm like nervous. Like, why is my kid speaking so fast?
mhm.
And then it dawned on me, if my hypothesis was correct, and she's got more synaptic connections growing in the brain and more things moving, that her brain is processing so fast that her mouth can't keep up.
Oh, wow.
That's what I came to. And I thought, well, maybe it's genetics. Maybe it's some genetics from mom and dad's why she's so smart. Maybe it's not my book. Maybe it's just, she just got it from mom and dad. I gave my book to a friend of mine.
Mhm.
She did the stuff in the book, followed the book. She said, Morris, I got 3 kids. I tried your book only on one of my kids.
Mhm.
That kid is the smartest kid that I have
Wow.
because of the stuff I did in your book. So I'm like, wow, there is maybe something to this.
Mhm.
And to this day, my daughter, she's like me on 10. She's like so smart. It's amazing. So, that was my first book. And that really came back to me wanting to be this great parent, from the beginning. And once I decided we're going to have this baby, we both said we're going to have the baby. What can you do from the beginning before the kid is born? So I think you have to have that kind of diligence and that kind of love because that passes through to the fetus. You may think that the fetus is just in there and that they're just in a little cocoon and they can't feel anything or feel vibration or anything. They can sense a lot. They
Mhm.
can sense not just sound, but they can sense emotion. They can sense, a lot of stuff. So you can pass on a lot if you have these positive affirmations. I would talk to her right on the belly. I would just talk to her, especially during the third trimester. I was just talking and talking. When she came out, she was hardly crying, and the doctors were nervous. And I did research, and they found out that if the baby is calm, they won't cry.
Mhm.
So when she finally did cry, I gave her my finger, and we got a picture of her grabbing my finger. That's the first thing she ever did. And she came out, she grabbed my little finger. So that's a very touching, and she stopped crying, and that was a touching moment. But I just love my kids. I mean, I try. I'm not the perfect dad by any means. They will tell you that for sure. I'm not perfect, but I try to do my best. And I think that's what's wrong with the world is that people get bricks thrown at them, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to go home and take it out on my kids." You know what? What do you mean take it out on your kids? These defenseless little people. Go to the gym and go hit a bag. Go
Yeah.
work out, go do something, but don't try to. I was very good because I had a lot of stress on my jobs too. I made sure I did not bring my stress home. There's a lot of, as we all know, a lot of talks about different people in different occupations that bring their stresses home and they take it out on somebody in the family. I made sure that I did not do that. So when I came home, and maybe this was not good, I came home and would not talk about the job at all.
Well, you know what? You learn how to leave it there, and so I want to make sure that I highlight your fifth tip, and it was this: to make a significant investment in your children um, with your time, attention, and focus. So you created a plan for their development from inception.
Yeah, basically, I was always an athlete my whole life. So, and I know that some of the school programs have been cut back as far as PE and other things. So that's why I took my kids to the park so much. I was running my kids. My kids would tell you, and my dad, he thinks we're on a football team. He's out there running us. I have my kids running sprints. and they didn't like us. They didn't like us sometime, but we still were out there getting, staying in great shape. So I wanted to keep my kids active, but also having quality time of just playing as well. And I documented their whole life. I have pictures, I have video from
Mhm.
when she was born all the way up till some years ago. But I just took a concerted effort to say, and there's sacrifice involved because when I was single, I'm all in great shape and I'm working out and I'm tight and I'm looking great. When you have kids, you're tired. Sometimes you can't get to the gym. Sometimes
Mhm.
you got to go to the PTA meeting. You got to go to the school play. You got to go to here. You got to practice. Get the homework done for school for the next day. You got to get dinner made. You got to do all this stuff, and by then you're knocked out on the couch. So you can't. So you sacrifice some of yourself for your kids, and
Mhm.
that's part of the job. That's part of
Absolutely.
I mean, I got kind of out of shape. I I got like a dad bod. When they were young, I turned into a pear a little bit, where I was kind
Oh,
of like, I kind of got that little spread, and I was like,
oh
oh
my goodness.
no. I'm
Oh
like,
my
oh no,
goodness.
we got to get back to the gym. So I got back and got it back,
You got it tight and right. That's
but,
awesome.
but you
So,
sacrifice.
well, you want to know what these tips that you've given us seem not to only be good for being a girl dad, but it seems to be wonderful and good ground for being a great dad.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna, my basic philosophy is if you're gonna have kids, love them and take care of them. I mean, come on. If, you're having them do the job, do the duty. You know, just get her done, as they say. It's just
Well, I'm going to say, how about just take time out to enjoy it?
yeah, you definitely gotta enjoy your kids, no doubt about that.
Awesome. Now I'm going to put your book cover back up. And as we take a look at your book cover, do you have any final words that you want to share with us?
Yes, one very significant actually. Uh, two people I didn't talk about. Three things I didn't talk about, and one thing is just for me. You see the little teddy bear she's holding there? My
Oh,
younger daughter.
yes. Uh huh.
That's the one that when we got attacked at the beach. That's the one that was at the beach with me.
I
She
see.
still she still has that teddy bear to this very day, and she's in her 20s now.
Aw.
So that's a cute little thing. Yes, but the other two that I didn't talk about are the duck down at the bottom. That's kind of a little comedy thing. I'll leave that.
Okay.
I'll leave that for the readers to check that out. That's kind of a comedy skit in itself, and that. But the one important thing I wanted to point out is the Native American on the horse in the book.
Okay. And I'm actually going to switch up so they can see it very well. They can see it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a Native American on a horse. I'm from Chicago, and as we know, all of the world has indigenous people
Mm-hmm.
whose land has been taken from them in some way, shape, or form by some foreigners coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that all of North America, which is where we are, was all inhabited by Native Americans
Mm-hmm.
for thousands of years.
Right.
So when I came to California from Chicago, we didn't have mountains like this in Chicago. Like California is beautiful. It's got these beautiful mountains and these beautiful vistas and all this stuff. I'm like, wow, this is beautiful out here. I wonder who was here before. Well, I knew it was Indians, but or Native Americans, but I just didn't know, what tribe or who. And so I did research, and I actually found through one of my colleagues at
Mm-hmm.
UCLA. One of my colleagues at UCLA happened to be an archaeologist for Southern California. So he knew all about the tribes and the indigenous people who were here. So as we went to all these parks as they were kids, I'd always think to myself, I wonder what Indian tribe was here. I wonder what Indian tribe was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I made that an integral part of the book
I see.
of this Native American person to pay homage and tribute to the people indigenous people who were here and are continuing to fight for their land or have had their land taken away or are misrepresented or not represented at all. I wanted to kind of pay some tribute to the indigenous peoples whose land, specifically to the 𝐓𝐢𝐻 Nation, which were the ones that were here in Southern California, the 𝐓𝐢𝐻 people.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm so glad that you included that. Morris, I just can't thank you enough for letting us explore your book with you. It has been an honor and a pleasure to have you.
Well, Erica, I just want to say that LinkedIn is a wonderful thing because you reached out to me and you found me on there, and here we are. So social media and technology is amazing. My book will be out in the fall, coming up here, not too in the near future. You can get it on Amazon. So I will let you know and put another post on LinkedIn when it's ready and it's available. But thank you so much for having me, Erica. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Family, I encourage everyone to go out and pre-order this fabulous book on Amazon, Hanging with the Girls. As you can see, it is a detailed exploration of Morris's adventures being a dad. And it's not your average children's book. So go out, get your pre-orders, and let's just have a good night and embrace being a girl dad. For now, I'll just simply say bye-bye for now. You're winning. You're winning. You're winning.